Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and welcome to video number 6 in this how to use Masonite for a video series. And in this video, we're going to be covering models. So in the previous video, we did migrations, which allowed us to create tables in our database. But now we want to create a way so we can interact with those tables using Python. Okay, so the way we do that is we're going to create a model, and I can just do that by just running the command Python migrate, and essentially, not migrate, Python model, Python craft model, again, so it's got a craft model, and then we put the name of the model, which is going to be to do, craft model to do. Okay, and that's going to create the model file. So now if I go to app/models, there is my model, and see, it's all set to go. Theoretically, this should be good to go. It should kind of pick up. Like the way frameworks like Laravel, Rails, and Masonite work is they do what's called convention over configuration, meaning if you follow standard industry conventions, you are going to have a much easier time because you don't have to worry about like configuring everything. So basically, it'll assume that your table is going to be conventionally named. So generally, your model, which is always like uppercase singular, so in this case to do, should have a mirroring table in your database that's called to-dos. Okay. Now, I always get confused, like what is it going to assume for the spelling of to-dos? I'm pretty sure it's going to assume to-do with an S at the end. This we usually do. But usually these things, they're pretty good at determining like certain offs, like, like baby would be babies and whatnot. So I'm going to assume there are no to-dos. But let's say you decided to not have a matching table name, like a table name that doesn't match that convention. You could explicitly state the name of the table. Okay, you would just do this. Okay, I would just do dunder table in my class. So I would just like get rid of this stuff here, and I'd just be like dunder table equals, in this case, my table name is to-dos, which we created in the previous video. And same thing, like again, it's going to assume next thing that it's going to assume is the primary key, which is going to assume is an ID field. But if for some reason you had it called anything else, you could specify it. Same thing with everything else. Like it's going to make a lot of assumptions, so you shouldn't have to touch the model at all. Once it's created, it should just work. But you can override those properties. Okay. Now, the cool thing is that once you have the model, we can now use this to write Python code, and there's a really nice way of using that. If you type in Python craft tinker, this is going to open up the Python console, the Python REPL. Okay, and the cool thing about this particular Python REPL, when you use, instead of typing in just Python and going into the REPL, by typing in Python craft tinker, it's going to open up and automatically load your Masonite project. So now I can refer to it and load things in there. So I can be like, so see, these things are automatically imported. So see, I have my app is imported. Okay, so everything from my app folder. Okay, these particular utilities and my models. So I should not have, so if I do print models, or if I do print to do, okay, see, I have my to do model. So now I could create a to do, and I can actually use this to interact with my models, which is always a great way to figure out like how you want to do things in your routes. Because oftentimes you're thinking, okay, wait, what is the exact thing that I want to do my routes? Well, I can experiment here. So I can be like, okay, hey, I'd like to create a to do. So I think the function for that is to do.create. Because again, to do is the model. It's this object that has all these functions built in. Because see, it's inheriting from model. So where do all these functions come from? Well, there's a base model. Okay, same thing with like Rails with like active model, and same thing with Laravel. There's always this model that has all these methods that do those SQL queries built in, and then your model that represents your table inherits from that. So that way it has all these functions built in, and again, it's making those assumptions based on the model name of what the table is going to be. It just kind of connects. So now I can be like to do.create, and I can start creating a to do. And again, my to do should have, let me just refer back to my migrations to remember what different fields my to-dos have. So go back to databases, migrations. So if I go here, basically my to-do should have a field called message. So we'll say message equals, in this case, because you can use named arguments. So I can be like message equals eat breakfast. And then the other thing is this other field which is nullable, so I don't have to fill it out, but I could do other, back into the here, other field equals yay. Okay, and then what I do is I hit enter, and that looks successful. It created a to-do. So see, like I see the to-do object right there. So that looks like it was successful. As far as I can tell, I don't see any errors. So now I can just test it out and say, okay, to-do dot find. And then this is the first to-do. So generally, again, we have that increments field. So it's going to be the first one's going to be 1. And again, it's just going to keep going up. So even if I delete 1, it'll always just keep going on to the next number. So I'm going to say, hey, to-do.find 1, meaning find me the to-do with the ID of 1 based on the primary key field, which is by default ID. Again, we can override that as you saw in the documentation. Okay, so to-do.find 1. And let's actually save that in a variable. So we'll just say to-do lowercase equals to-do uppercase. To-do uppercase is always the model. So I can save an individual to-do in the to-do lowercase. And I'll just hit enter. That no errors, so that looks like that went fine, and I can just test this out. I can just be like to-do dot message eat breakfast, to-do dot other field yay. So see, it was saved. Good. And then there's all sorts of different functions. Again, you're not going to memorize all of them. There's a lot of them in any of these ORMs, but it's a lot easier than just doing a straight up SQL query, which is nice. Okay, and it's much more sort of semantic because I can say, hey, I'm referring to to-do. And then again, if I have other things again like photos, users, whatnot, I just use the model to do all my interaction. So right here in the model section of the documentation, I can kind of see what all these different functions are. So if we keep going, and here's just kind of walking you through other things you can do in the model. Okay, so you can see here, like if I just wanted to get the first item that shows up, I just do first. If I just want to find something based on a particular ID, I do user.find. And again, you think of user, you can replace that with to do whatever model for whatever table. Okay, where to find something specific. So hey, I want to find the one that has a property of active. That's 1. You can look through this documentation and see all sorts of different examples of like, hey, deleting a user, and so forth. Selecting a user, updating a user. But this craft tinker portal is where I can kind of get that done. Because you always want to practice it before you write it into your routes. So that way you kind of make sure that, hey, if I do this, this is the result I'm going to get. So that's the beauty of using the tinker command. And again, I can always just exit by doing exit as a function. And that'll take me right out of there. But let's say you want to start off with like some dummy data. And you don't want to have to keep going into Tinker and having to create all this dummy data every time you decide to restart your database because you decide that, hey, I'm going to just drop the database and start from scratch. What you can do is you can create what's called a seed. Okay, so if we go back to databases, I'll make this close out migration. There's this folder called seeds, and by default it has this database seeder. So I could theoretically just use this. Okay, and what this does is it's going to call anything it's going to run this function. Okay, as you can see here, there's already a user table seeder to create a dummy user. So see, it's already built in to create a dummy user that exists there. Okay, so we want to create one for to-dos. Okay, and again, eventually we'll get into sort of the built-in authentication so you can see how that works, but one step at a time, one step at a time. Okay, so what I can do is I can do Python craft, I think it's seeder, and then you just give a name to the seeder. So we'll say to-do. Okay, so define, yeah, I think it's actually seed. So Python craft seed to-do. Okay, and see now we have a new to-do table seeder. Okay, and now we just have to import the model. So we'll just say from app.models import to-do dot, actually I think it's from import models dot to-do import to-do. There we go. Okay, cool. So now what I can do is I can sit here and just say, hey, I want to make 3 to-dos when I run this. So I'll just say, to-do dot create, and then I can make an array of to-dos. Okay, and then I think I just pass in There was an example here earlier, injecting many at the same time. So let me find that example. Create, selecting, relationships, conversation. Where did I see create? Eager loading, so I'm spend over here. Single results, collections, subqueries, relationships. Using relationships, eager loading, joining. Where is creating? Updating, here we go, creating. And bulk creating, yeah, so we just use dictionaries in that case. So I would then just pass in a list of dictionaries, so I can just be like message eat breakfast, and I'm not gonna bother with the other field. Okay, and then I will pass in a few of these. Eat lunch, eat dinner. Get rid of this pass here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is head back over to the database eater and, import the other one. So I'll say from dot, which means in this folder, so dot to do table seeder, import to do table seeder. So I'm importing the seeder from that other file, and then I can just do this self.call to do table seeder, and now it's going to call both these seeders when I run craft or Python craft. I think it's Python craft seed run. If I'm right. I think it's just seed run. Oh, didn't like that. Why didn't I like that? Okay, dictionary update sequence element here has a length of 1, 2 is required. Okay, I guess it still wants the other field. I thought I said for it to be nullable, but I guess not. So let's just try this. Just add it. Other field. Yay. So I do this. There we go. Now run this again. And what didn't like now? Well, that's because I already created one user. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll back the database. So I can do Python craft migrate refresh. What this will do is going to undo all my migrations and redo them, which essentially just resets my database. Okay, so basically I've just deleted everything that was in my database, but all my tables got recreated. Okay, so that's craft migrate refresh. So now I'll run the seed again and see the seed was run successfully. It ran all those commands, and now all that data should be in there. So I can confirm that by doing Python craft tinker. Okay, and then I can say let's do this. To-dos equals to-do.all. And then let's just see here, and if I do print to-dos, so see it's a collection. And if I do len to-dos, I should have 3 to-dos. A length of 1. Let's examine. Because there's one collection object probably. So to-dos dot 1 or 0 dot message other field. Interesting. Why did it do it that way? Message. Didn't quite create them the way I think it should have created them. Let me see if I read. Oh, because I should have used a method called bulk create. Oh, that's why. Okay, so let me just change this. Bulk create. Okay. So let me exit here. Let's do the refresh again. So I can do the migrate refresh. That's going to clear out the table. Then I'm going to run the seed run. Okay, now let's go back to Python craft tinker. And then once again, do length of todo.all. Should have, and there we go. We have 3 to-dos. Okay, perfect. Okay, so that worked. Again, because I did that, I was using the wrong method. I got the wrong result before. But that's why we use Tinker, so you can experiment and confirm that you did the things you thought you did. Okay, and now I can use that in my routes. So if I go back to that first route that we created a while back, so if I go back to my controllers, I go back to my pages controller, and now I can import that model. So I'll say import or from app.models.todo, import to do. Okay, now what I can do is when I do this route, we'll say to-dos. Okay, and then we're gonna send over to-do.all. Okay, so all the to-dos will be passed into this array here. And then I should be able to go change the template. So let's head over to our template that we made earlier, first page.html. And then in here, we just do a for loop. So for to do in to-dos, and for, and we'll just do an h1 with to-do.name or to-do.message. Okay, so theoretically we should see the eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner, because again, here in my controller, I imported the model, and now I can use that model to get all the data, and I'm passing it in the dictionary that I'm passing to the render function. Okay, and so now to-dos become something that's available in my HTML file, and I can now use that there. Cool. So let's see here. Let's do Python craft serve. And let's go try it out. So go to the first page. And you see right there, eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner. Okay, so if I were to keep adding more to-dos, that's going to allow me, and I can create a form and have it post. We'll go more into that later, but the idea is now you can kind of see how it's all starting to connect. So now, now I have this database, and I can create different routes that I can add, update, delete things, all by creating a model. But I create a model after I did all the migrations in the table. So I'll see you all later. Have a great day and enjoy.